Hello, everyone. I am Mark Rash. I'm a learning technology specialist over in OIT. So I do some Canvas and Zoom support, and then I also do like online training, multimedia development, and I also kind of headed up the project to roll out Materia, which we're here to talk about today. And joining me today, I also have Coach K and Dr. Craig, if you all would like to say a little bit.
I'll go on and go since you mentioned me first. I am a lecturer at the University of Tennessee College of Communication and Information, and also the co-director of the Diversity Student Leaders Society there. So students have always been a main focus of mine. Been at UT 25 years.
I'm Linden Craig. I'm a veterinary at the vet school, and I have used Materia in my general pathology course. I've been here 21 years.
Well, I've been here 3, but I'm working on it. All right. Well, thank you. So we only have, 99 slides. So no, I'm just kidding. We don't have a whole lot. Let me get my share going here. And share sound. Okay. All right. So of course, we're here to talk about engaging students with interactive course widgets using this app called Materia. And what is Materia? Good place to start, huh? So Materia, if you haven't seen it or heard of it, it's an online app that is accessed through Canvas. You don't really have to do anything to get an account. We'll talk about that here in just a minute, but it's available to you now, and it allows you to add these engaging apps that Materia calls widgets into your online courses. Those widgets include things like basic games, puzzles, study tools, and we'll look at some of the options available. They can be put in your courses as either graded or ungraded assignments, or they can also just be ungraded module activities. So study aids like flashcards or something like that, you can make a part of your module, but not necessarily for a grade, since it's kind of hard to grade flashcards, but provide some interactive options for students to study with. They're primarily intended to be asynchronous, although if you're really creative, you could probably use one in a synchronous session. But again, they're primarily intended for students to kind of do on their own, either again for a grade or not. And like I said, it's available now. You don't have to do anything to get an account. It's going to automatically create an account for you the first time you access Materia through Canvas. And with that being said, I'll just jump over to Canvas and kind of show you how it works and show you how you can get it plugged into your course. So this is just a typical Canvas course site. And like most of the tools that you want to add to Canvas, you'll go into the course settings over here along the left. And then the navigation tab at the top. So that controls all the items that will show up or not in this left-hand navigation for your course. Just in case you're not familiar with this area, there's basically 2 lists of items here. So this top list includes the items that are enabled and available in the course, and then the bottom list are those items that are not. And so while we're talking about this, I would encourage you to always kind of clean up this list so that students only have the things that they actually might need in your course and just disable everything else. So what we need to do then is find Materia in this bottom list, lots and lots of scrolling, and you can either drag that to the top list, or we can just select this 3 dots icon and select enable. And then that adds it to the list. And then we just need to scroll way back down there again and save. And now we have Materia in our left-hand navigation. And once we select Materia, we're taken to this kind of interstitial screen here that there is a link to learn a little bit more about how to use widgets if you want that. But the main thing we're interested in here is this go to Materia. So we always access Materia in this way. Like we can't go directly to Materia and log in. We always have to start in Canvas, select Materia in the course, and then go to Materia. And that's going to open it up in a new tab. And if it's the first time you've used Materia or you haven't created any widgets yet, your list is going to be blank. But by default, we're taken over to your widgets. So these are the widgets that you've kind of taken ownership of and started at least drafting your own content in there. And we'll come back to this screen in just a minute, but I first wanted to kind of show you some, what are these widgets exactly? So the widget catalog, these are all of the available widgets. And you can kind of think of them as templates of sorts. So these are, the programming is all done, the design work is all done, and these are kind of just sitting here waiting for you to plug in your content to make them yours and to fit your course and your students. So I'll just highlight some of the different types here. So this first one up here, choose your own adventure, is just that. Like you can create from simple to very complex branching scenarios if you would like to do that, where you can kind of send students down a path, they make some decisions along the way, and maybe you vary the path that they're going to go down. And so if you noticed in the catalog, I just selected the one I'd kind of like to take a look at, and they all have this demo built in with just some demo content that you can kind of play around with, see if that widget might fit your needs. And I won't go too far in this one, but this one, as you can see, is kind of a nursing scenario where we present some sort of content up front, a lot of text, but it does support some media, some images, videos, audio, things like that. So we will present the scenario, and then right away we're presenting a question or a decision point. And each of these paths, like I said, can send them down a different branch of the tree. So it can be very useful, but it can also get pretty complicated. So I would encourage you to kind of rein in your tree because your tree can grow wild if you're not careful. But this does provide a different way to either consume some content or let students make some decisions along the way and see some virtual consequences of those decisions, and provide some guidance. So we'll just choose an option here, and then we present a little bit more content, and then another decision. Okay, so that's one type. That's the adventure. So if I go back to the catalog, as you can see, there's other things here. We have crossword puzzles. We have a Jeopardy style quizzing game. So just to show you what that one looks like, it's loosely Jeopardy-ish, where we provide some categories. These are basically just question numbers for that category, but just a different way to provide some quizzing. We recommend to use these for low stakes or no stakes even assignments, or study aids so maybe it could be homework assignments, maybe it could be just study tools. Some of the others, I mentioned flashcards. So, if you want to provide opportunity to study vocabulary or matching dates to when things happened, flashcards can be useful for that. And you don't have to worry about the programming. You can just drop in your content and Materia will handle it for you. There are some matching games. Guess the phrase. Most of these are customizable, meaning, like I said, you can drop your own content in there. Some of them are highly specific, so I'm not sure why they're in the featured part of the catalog, but normal distribution, there's only so much you can do with a normal distribution calculator. So that one's highly specific to that particular need. but most of these you can kind of do your own thing with. And as I mentioned, you can select any of them, you can play a demo. But if you find one that you want and say, I want to customize, I want to make a crossword puzzle, and I'm happy with the demo, so I'm going to scroll. Before I actually create the widget, just to show you there, it does kind of highlight some keywords, based on the capabilities of this particular widget, as well as links to the guides on, player's guide is for students, creator's guide is for instructors, if you need a little bit of guidance on how to create the widget. But I will say Materia is very user friendly, so it will walk you through the steps you need to make this one yours. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that, create your widget. And so this has opened up the crossword widget in the editor. And first thing right away, it's wanting me to name it. So I'll just name it. And like I said, it's going to walk you through exactly what you need to do. This screen is going to vary a little bit depending on the type of widget. But obviously for this one, we need words and clues. And so we'll just play around here. So we'll add the word widget. And okay. Oops. Okay, so you kind of get the point there. We can delete words, we can add hints if we want to. So we're building our widget. While we're building it, we can preview it. So that opens in a new tab and just kind of shows what we have so far. This is what students will see when they interact with the widget. Of course, I can continue editing. There's this saved draft. So until I'm completely finished with the widget, I can always keep a draft of it in Materia. And this doesn't link it to Canvas or anything. It's really just in my Materia area. So I'm going to go ahead and save the draft, and it's telling me it's saved. And so that initial screen that we came to from Canvas when we first went to Materia was the My Widgets area, which again, yours will be empty until you've created something. But notice here's my crossword puzzle, and it's still in draft status. While it's in draft status, it can never be used in Canvas. So it's, once we finalize it in Materia, basically what we'll need to do is publish it, which doesn't automatically put it in Canvas, but it makes it available for Canvas. Okay, so while I'm working on this, my widget screen, I can select the widget I'd like to work with. Again, I can preview it. There's some other options here. I won't get into too many of those in this session, but if I want to continue editing, I can do that from here. And we're back in that same screen. It does keep a save history, so if I mess something up along the way, I can go back to a previous version. That's very helpful in that adventure widget, especially. And then, so once I'm happy with my widget, I'm ready to at least make it available to Canvas. I can do that by publishing, and it's just going to tell me, it's going to remove the draft status, and it's going to make it available for me to add to my Canvas. So I'm going to go ahead and publish, and notice the draft status is gone. And typically I just go ahead and close the app. And I say that because if you keep it open for a long period of time, it may eventually time out. And if it times out, you might be prompted to log in, which you can't do because you have to go through Canvas, or you might see some strange error message along the way or something like that. So I typically just, once I'm done over here, I just close the tab, and I can always go back to Materia again if I need to. All right, so I've built a very simple widget. Now, if I want to add that to my course, there's a couple ways I can do that. Probably the most common way would be as an assignment. and it could be graded or ungraded, as we mentioned earlier. But just to quickly go through this, I'm going to add an assignment, and I'll give it a name. And this is just typical assignment stuff, you know, whatever instructions you'd like, whatever points value. Now the points value comes into play in this way. So Materia, if it is a scoreable widget, meaning it, you know, Materia will grade the student's performance on it, it's going to return a percentage when they submit it. And so of course that percentage is going to get multiplied by whatever value you specify here. And that's what will appear in the gradebook. Okay, so you can set the points however you would like them. We need the submission type to be this external tool because it's external to Canvas. And then we can select this find option. And when we go through the list, we'll find Materia and select it. And so this is going to bring up my list of widgets, the ones that are not in draft status. So these are the ones that are published. I can also jump straight into Materia in a new tab if I need to go over there and kind of look around or make some edits or anything like that. But if I know I want to use this one, I'll just do use this widget, and it will connect it up to the assignment, and then I will select. And so the URL is populated for me. I don't have to worry about any of that. I'll briefly mention that, you know, just like any assignment, Canvas lets you set the amount of attempts you want to allow for an assignment. Materia also does that. So I typically suggest using Canvas to manage that. If you want to limit the number of attempts, I would, because the two don't talk to each other in that way. So if you have different settings between the two, it could get unpredictable as far as, you know, attempts or availability. Okay, so I've got my assignment set up. I'm just going to save and publish. Now, as the instructor, this is what you're typically going to see. You should see, if everything worked out correctly, you should just see that it's embedded. You won't see the actual puzzle, although you could preview it. But students, when they come to the published assignment, they will see the actual crossword puzzle, and it's just embedded right there on the page. It's ready for them to interact with, and they will receive their score, which again will multiply by the points value. So that's one way to add a widget to your course. Another way to add one is, we talked about study tools, so like flashcards. So you can add a widget directly to a module. So if we jump over to modules, and you can see there's already some here, but I'll go ahead and add one. So again, instead of an assignment, we want external tool. And then from our list, we can choose Materia. And then I'm sure I have some flashcards or something along the way here. Here we go. And then if we scroll a little bit below this strange box here, it's automatically going to name it Materia. So you can always rename it to something else. And then it's unpublished by default, but it's added it to our module. And so students will see eventually flashcards. So it kind of explains, you know, how the flashcards work. They're fairly self-explanatory, but just in case. And so we have side A, side A. I don't know how many I have here, but yeah. So again, Materia handles all the coding, all the design, and everything like that. And you just worry about the content. Now, one other thing I'll note while I'm here, you can also allow your students to create Materia widgets if you'd like. If you want to offer them some creative way, to demonstrate their knowledge of something, or, just an alternative assignment, they can create widgets if you keep Materia in this left-hand navigation. And so let me get out of this. So notice I'm in student view and I still see Materia over here. Now, if you don't want them to do that, of course, you can hide it again once you're finished with it. That doesn't affect the widgets you've added as assignments or to modules. But as a student, I can go to Materia basically the same way you do. I'm going to have the same features. I'm logged in now as test student, and I have a few here already. But the student can do pretty much everything that you just did. The difference is student widgets are going to be created in what's called guest mode. And that simply means, and that shows up right here, and that simply means anyone who completes that widget. So if the student sends it to someone else, it's not going to capture scores and associate those with names, FERPA. So it's completely open to anyone with the URL, but all of the data is anonymous. So nothing gets stored anywhere. So that's the main difference. And that's forced on a student user. They can't change that. Whereas for an instructor, this, I don't remember what the access is called, but it's not guest mode. And we typically just leave it to whatever the default is, because, for reasons. So students, they can create their widget for your assignment, and then students can get this URL here. And that's how, they can submit that to an assignment. So maybe you have the assignment set up as an online assignment where they submit a URL. They can plug this URL in there and boom, they've submitted a widget. All right, so I'm going to close that, get out of student view. Yeah, so again, one of the main issues that we've seen come up is just a minor thing, and that has to do with logging in, logging out. So I would always recommend, if it's acting strange, go back to your course. And I would even if you're on this Materia tab already, I would just select it again just to make sure this kind of refreshes, and then go to Materia and you'll be logged in. And I do see we have some stuff in the chat. Okay, Chrome is the browser to use too. Yes, we have experienced some strange browser behavior that kind of changes from time to time. The most recent, I think, is Safari and Firefox. The default settings block third-party cookies or third-party tracking, which, Materia is on a separate server from Canvas. And so that browser fusses about that, and it just sometimes doesn't work. So if you experience a problem, I would suggest trying Chrome or checking your security settings. Maybe they're a little bit too strong. Yes, I also hide Materia after I complete my course. Yeah, exactly.
Mark, I think Emil had a question there about using other languages in the crossword.
Is there any way we can type using other languages? I don't know that right off, but I will check that out. I'm not really sure. I'll add that to my list to investigate. Yeah, I will check that out and let you know. Sure. Okay, so yeah.
If I make a widget in one course, is it available in another course?
It can be used in basically as many courses as you want. I would be careful with that, just because Materia does keep track of scores. So let me see if I can find one that has some activity. Okay, so this is a matching activity. Materia is not aware of what course this is used in Canvas. All Materia knows is that one student in spring completed it. And so it's not tied to the course in that way. But if I were to use this same exact copy of this widget in multiple courses, all of those scores are going to show here in the same place. So one way around that, if you don't want all those scores to show in the same place, you can, once you finish your widget, you get it the way you want it, you can make a copy of it. And that's basically doing a file save as kind of deal. And you can even put the course name and or semester, in your title just for your own benefit to kind of keep track of that stuff. But I could load this same widget into multiple courses.
And how do you share it with another instructor who teaches maybe the same course, but it's another instructor?
Sure, you can absolutely do that. So there's two ways that works. So, and it's depends on which direction you kind of want it to go. So if it's my widget and I want to give someone else access to it, I go to my widgets, just like we are here, and select my widget. This collaborate feature here controls who has access to the widget. And of course I have access, but I can look up, as long as that person that you're wanting to give it to has logged into Materia at least once, because they have to have an account. And that only happens if they've gone to Materia from Canvas at least one time. But if that has happened, I'm just going to search for somebody. I usually just start entering their net ID, and then I can choose them from the list because Rosie has accessed Materia at least once. And then I can choose here full access. So that means Rosie can delete this widget. She can basically do everything with the widget that I can do. Or view scores means she can only see, I believe it limits her ability just a little bit. She can see scores like of students who have completed this exact widget, but she can't delete it. Be careful here too for a couple of reasons. Obviously FERPA concerns, these tend to be low stakes, so it's not like we're putting exam scores on here, but just be mindful, who you're giving access to, because they can see prior student scores on this widget. And also be careful because you could delete yourself from the widget, in which case you'll have to go back to that other person to get access. So I'm not actually going to change anything here, but so that's one way to do it. The other way, and I'm not sure I can show you, but if I am an instructor in a Canvas course that has a widget in it that another instructor put in there. So I'm an instructor in the course, but it's not my widget. If I pull up that widget in the assignment or wherever it is in the course, Materia will give me an option to say request access. And so that kind of prompts the owner of the widget to say, hey, I'd like to have access to this widget. And then they can either grant or deny. It's basically the same as collaborate. It's just you're requesting to collaborate. So two ways to do that. While we're here, I touched on this briefly, but like I said, if it is scoreable, Materia does keep track of those scores. You can get this distribution. You can take a look at individual scores, and it does group them by term. So here we're looking at spring. I can see what test student did on this one. They're doing great. Or I can look at older terms. So there's my fall. But again, this is only looking at the term. So if this was used in multiple courses, they're all going to show here in the same place. Okay. Well, I think that primarily, I mean, that covers most of what I wanted to show today. And I'd like to turn it over to Coach K to kind of talk a little bit more about, beyond just the coolness of widgets, why it might be a good idea to consider using these in your courses.
Thank you, Mark. I'm going to, though, go into Michelle's question. Is there a way that we can reference images within the different Materia software programs other than putting it in Photoshop and doing it like I do?
Now, when you say reference images, what do you mean?
Crediting them.
Oh.
We're taught in communication to credit everything, and
Sure.
along those lines, I do have the references page for my information if anybody wants them.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, you could do what you do, so kind of Photoshop it and add it on there. You could, if it's an assignment, you could use that assignment area if you wanted to credit things there. If it's like that adventure widget, you could probably put one of those text slides at the very end for references. So there's a few ways to do it, but I don't know of like a built-in literal captioning tool.
Okay, and they are different when you go into the different widgets. And then when I started using these, I picked different ones, and they really like the Space Cadet one and the matching and Jeopardy, but their least favorite is the crossword puzzle. And I believe that is so because they actually have to work harder at it than the others. And again, we're talking low stakes here. Basically, I use these for homework to make sure they've done their homework so we can have a good discussion in class the next day. But I'll move on. We are taught in communication studies and public speaking in particular to target our audience. So we have to know how our audience brains think and what they're used to, right? So Gen Z, we have some stats here. They have a digital preference, right? They're into digital gaming. They're not interested in reading a physical book. Like my book is totally online now. And they're media experts. But we also, if you want to move the next slide, Mark, have Generation Alpha coming in. And they're very tech savvy. They would prefer, like Mark was showing, to co-create in their education experiences here at UT. They're extremely comfortable with social media and like Alexa and artificial intelligence tools. And they, again, expect a personalized learning experiences. So you could do that with Materia, if you want to do the next slide. So we're targeting these brains. Okay. They're digital natives. I'm a digital immigrant. So I've had to change how I structure my course, and it's a flipped experiential learning course now. Over the years I've been here at UT to target and help them learn, because that's my main reason I'm here at UT. Speed and automation, right? They want immediate return, and Materia offers that. And these guys are lacking critical reasoning skills. So if you can incorporate reasoning into Materia, that would help them learn and grow. Okay, next slide, please. So we have some key terms called edutainment. This came out, ironically, with Walt Disney in 1954, but a lot of research has been done on it, where we take education tools and combine them with entertainment, and it leads to the next slide, Mark. Gamification, right? And that's what they're used to. They've been on smart tools, smartphones for a long time and interacting with these applications. So their brains are designed that way. Now, the brains are neuroplastic. They can change. Dr. Laura Boyd has a TED Talk that talks about that. That's awesome. And we discuss that in my class, how their brains are a little bit different than my brain. And this experiential learning process, which is highlighted by Materia, we can change this long-term synapses and long-term memory. So if you want to go on, next slide. So strategies. We want to leverage these experiential learning opportunities. If they get in my class, they get to do it over and over again. So if they get to do it over and over again, that reinforces the long-term memory synapses change I'm trying to have for skills to get them into the workplace. Technology targets students. Relate the information to those students and collaborate in peer learning. So if you want to give them a group project, have them develop a few of these for their peers. And I believe we're going on, and that might be my last slide, Mark.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So if you have any questions, let me know. I think we're handing it off to Miss Linda, is it?
Yeah, Dr. Craig, yes.
Dr. Craig, yes.
So I just use these widgets. I'm going to blame Dr. Bailey, Dr. Misty Bailey, because she sent out an email during the pandemic saying there's these fun things you should try. One of many of her emails to help us teach during the pandemic. And for whatever reason, I tried the Materia widgets, and they were so much fun and easy, so easy to make that I actually then sent them to other people that are teaching in the course and said, you should try these. And one of my other colleagues has made some widgets now. And I just learned how I can request access to those. So I'm excited about that. Thank you, Mark. And how I can share mine with hers, because it always bothered me that I couldn't see her widgets because they look like fun. And so normally before pre-pandemic, the students in my course, it's a 200-point course with a 100-point midterm and a 100-point final. And then it used to be that they could come to our gross rounds and look at gross specimens, bloody, gory organs. And if they came to 5 rounds, they could get 5 bonus points. So out of the 200-point course, they could add 5 bonus points. Then a lot of them would like it so much they would keep coming to rounds, which was sort of our goal. Well, we couldn't have rounds during the pandemic, so I used these widgets instead. And the same thing, we have maybe 10 or 12 widgets, and they can do all of them, but they get a maximum of 5 bonus points, which makes, I'll have to admit, although it shows up in grades in Canvas, you know, I have to go in and fiddle with them because I don't want them to get 12 bonus points. They can only get a maximum of 5 bonus points. But I love that even though they know they can only get 5 bonus points, a lot of them do the other ones. And then in the student evaluations, they all said how much they love the widgets and they found them as helpful study tools. And so I really like them. They're fun to make. The students like them. So I strongly encourage you to try them. I love the sequencer. That's my favorite because a lot of what I teach is pathogenesis of a disease. And I want them to know that this has to happen before this. And that leads to the next. And so I like the sequencer a lot. And I've also used the sorter because they get description and diagnosis confused. And so they have to sort words and phrases into different folders. And then I like the crosswords too. So anyway, that's my experience with them.
That's great. Thank you. So with that, let me switch to our next slide here. So just to kind of wrap up quickly, I know we're getting close to time. I'll mention these couple of resources. So we do have detailed steps on OIT's website on how to use Materia. You can either go to that URL or just search for Materia on the OIT site, and detailed step-by-step instructions there and some videos. We also have a self-paced workshop, which includes some of that same content that I just talked about, but a little bit more detail and just structured a slightly different way. So you're welcome to check that out just at workshop.utk.edu and search for Materia, and you're welcome to sign up for that. And of course, if you have questions along the way, feel free to reach out to me or submit a ticket if you want to. Happy to help along the way.
I just want to add to that, Mark. Mark is a great resource, and he's very quick in responding when you have any questions.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That is a great question about accessibility, and that's something we've been asking for. So some of the widgets definitely are accessible. Some are partly accessible, and then there's some just by their very nature can never be accessible. Like there's one, I think, that you're choosing between two images on the screen. So obviously that's very visual in nature. There's not a chart or a list of the level of accessibility for each widget, unfortunately. But I will say the team at UCF, which is who developed Materia, they do continue to work to improve accessibility. In fact, they just updated most of the widgets within the last 6 months or so to improve accessibility, and they are continuing to work on that. I'm hoping they will publish some type of listing just to kind of give us some guidance, on their take up on it. But we don't have that yet.